Sometimes I feel as though NBA fans and sometimes even NBA players forget that basketball is a two-sided sport. There is offense, the thing that sells tickets and is also very important, and defense, the boring thing that wins championships. I am just as guilty of this bias as anyone else. If I was to say that I found Kawhi Leonard stealing the ball from Ben McLemore 3 times in a row to be just as fun as watching Curry pull up for a 35-foot bomb, I'd be lying to you. But as a Bulls fan, I watched basketball mostly from a defensive perspective because of the Bulls coach at the time, Tom Thibodeau, a defensive mastermind. After Derrick Rose was injured, the Bulls were all defense besides for an occasional backdoor pass from Joakim Noah. Watching the Bulls from 2013 to when Tom was fired in 2015, #FireGuardPax, shaped how I felt about basketball, to where a player being an awful defender really pisses me off. Exhibit A, Nikola Mirotic. So when a player is great at defense, such as Kawhi Leonard, Andre Iguodala, or Jimmy Butler, I give them a lot of respect for playing hard on the boring side of the ball. One of my favorite defenders of all time is Andrei Kirilenko, who is a combo forward who played in the NBA for 13 seasons, mostly with the Utah Jazz. Andre, to me, is the most underrated defensive player of all time. And before we get into the stats, let me explain Kirilenko's game. Andre was, like I said, a combo forward, which for the early 2000s when he played was very rare. Back then, the difference between a small forward and a power forward was pretty distinct, which is not so much the case anymore. Andre is also 6'9", but at only 227 pounds, for his size, he was lightning quick. And you might not think a guy with this haircut is going to be much of an athlete, but you would be wrong. AK-47, as he was called, could get up there. His vertical leap allowed him to posterize players on offense, but on defense it allowed him to pin shots against the backboard and on one famous 2-minute sequence, block a prime Kobe Bryant 4 times in a row regardless of the moves that Kobe put on him to create space. He was also great at playing the passing lane and picking people's pockets. Andre in his career in Utah, where he spent most of his entire prime, averaged 1.8 blocks and 1.4 steals, almost 2 blocks a game as a wing defender, and in his absolute prime from 2003 to 2007, one of those seasons being an all-star season for him, in those 4 seasons, Andre averaged 2.8 blocks and 1.5 steals. And in the 2003-2004 season, AK-47 averaged a league-high 3.3 blocks. But steal and block stats do not always equal a good defender, so in his advanced defensive stats, Kirilenko in his prime averaged 4 defensive win shares a season and a 4.7 defensive box plus minus. In comparison, Jimmy Butler in the 16-17 season had 3.8 defensive win shares and a 1.1 defensive plus minus. Andre Iguodala had 2.9 defensive win shares and a 1.7 defensive box plus minus. And finally, Kawhi Leonard had 4.7 defensive win shares and a 1.5 defensive plus minus. So Kirilenko in these years was one of the best defenders in NBA history. And if you think Kawhi is only a bit better because he had to guard the opposite team's best player and Kirilenko didn't, you'd be wrong, because Kirilenko did the exact same thing, guarding players like Kobe Bryant, Vince Carter, or even Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan, all in their primes. But despite these great defensive statistics, Kirilenko only made 3 all-defensive teams, and only one of those 3 was a first-team selection. I think a lot of this can be attributed to the fact that he played for the Utah Jazz for his prime, and they weren't good until he was kind of out of his prime, and even then, it's the freaking Utah Jazz. Small franchises, unless wildly successful, tend to not get as much exposure as maybe they deserve. I was going to look at a few defensive numbers to see if Kirilenko deserved a few Defensive Player of the Year awards, but to be fair, he didn't deserve them because Ben Wallace was winning them at the time, and looking at the numbers, Wallace was better, which says a lot about Ben Wallace's defensive abilities. But Kirilenko often wasn't even a candidate. I did a lot of research trying to find candidates for each season, which was a pain in the ass, by the way. The only season that he was even seen as a candidate was 2005 and 2006, and even then he was generally considered to be 3rd or 4th best, which is absolutely ridiculous. So with that, today's question of the day is, who do you think is right now or was a very underrated defender? Could be a current player or a past one. And last time I asked you guys where you thought DeMarcus Cousins would end up signing in the next offseason, and Robert Champion said, question of the day, he is best friends with John Wall, so the decision to sign with the Wizards would be my guess, and besides, he has a better chance of going to the finals in the East than in a top-heavy West. LeBron probably will leave, and Boston is beatable even with Kyrie. Washington is the best spot for Boogie. I definitely agree with that. A lot of people were saying Washington. It makes a lot of sense, so that's a common opinion. Some less common opinions are one from All Around Highlights, who said, I think DeMarcus Cousins will end up on the Milwaukee Bucks because Giannis Antetokounmpo and DeMarcus Cousins together will be unstoppable. I'd say that's a bit of a stretch, but it is possible, but with Boogie's reputation, I don't know that Milwaukee's management would want to mess with that core. And the second out there comment was from Kevin Prashad, who said, DeMarcus Cousins to Golden State. Obviously a joking comment, but please don't make me think of a world where the Warriors get another freaking superstar. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.
I dare you play your cards, boy, you bet I'm a trendsetter too. Fire when the strobe hits you.
That's it, Brian? Yes.